Hello and welcome to the third Quincy Gillmore Civil War Roundtable video. Quincy Gillmore Roundtable is a group that's open to anyone who's interested in military, political, and social aspects of the American Civil War. We meet at Lorain County Community College 8 times a year in the iLoft building, second floor, room 207 at 7 p.m. And here are the dates. If you notice, they're generally the first Monday of every month, unless a holiday bumps us to the second. Today, I want to share a 10-slide story about small town Lorain County, Ohio in the Civil War. The National Park Service shares how the most common occupation for soldiers before they fought was a farmer, which shows that small town soldiers represented really the core of the Civil War armies. The first town I want to talk about is Huntington Township, Ohio. It's about 5 miles south of Wellington on State Route 58, and it's really located in the southernmost part of the county. The population of Huntington in 1857 was 1,173 people. 10 years later, it was down to 983. That was partially because some people moved to Wellington because there was a railroad stop there, or they moved closer to Wellington. And unfortunately, 18 men or more, possibly, Huntington men died while serving in the Union Army. And when you think about it, that's nearly 2% of the town's entire 1867 population. They erected a monument in Huntington quite early in 1868, and the front of the monument reads, "In grateful memory of the volunteers from Huntington who offered up their lives to preserve the Federal Union in the Great American Rebellion." Now, today, the term Federal Union might sound redundant, but if you look at secession documents, they would refer to leaving the Federal Union. And so that was a common phrase, apparently, of the time. The other phrase that really stood out to me was the Great American Rebellion. And in the North, the war was often referred to as a rebellion until sometime in the 1880s, when Civil War became the more generally accepted term. When you think about people in the South, we often hear about Southerners referring to the war as the war between the states. But in the Southern Historical Society papers, which carefully went through publications to see what most people in the South referred to the war as, and Civil War actually appeared twice as often as war between the states. So it appears that the South called it a civil war in general much earlier than the North did. Numerous Civil War soldiers are buried in the Huntington Cemetery, but my son Ryan and I went there and we couldn't locate any of them who actually died during the Civil War, although we did find some that fought and survived the war and were later buried in the cemetery. And since I'm not known for taking great pictures, I feel like I have to tell you that's not my thumbprint. It's actually the sun at the top of this picture. When I took the photo, the sun was so bright that I didn't think the term Huntington would show up, but it actually worked out quite well, so I included the photo in this slideshow. To feature one of the men from Huntington, Theodore Durlam of the 169th OBI Company B. He was born in 1842 in Clyde, which is another Ohio small town, this one in adjacent Erie County. He served 100 days in the war. Then in 1865, he married Felina J. Harrington. 9 years later, they headed out west to Kansas. There, he farmed and dabbled in stock raising and dairying. After fighting grasshoppers and drought, Theodore began working in a general store and eventually became a partner. Then 12 years after that, Felina died. 2 years later, Theodore brought the family back to Ohio because he needed to care for his widowed mother. He actually lived for 65 years after the Civil War ended, dying in 1930 and being buried in Huntington Cemetery. The second town that I want to feature is Pittsfield Township, Ohio, and it is about 6 miles north of Wellington on State Route 58, and the monument is on the property of the town hall. If you look at various sources, this monument was dedicated in 1894, 1895, or 1896, although research has indicated that the last date is the correct one. Few people lived in Pittsfield really until the railroad arrived in 1855, and by 1860 there were nearly 1,500 people living in this small town. Local historian Jeff Sigsworth notes how two of his ancestor cousins from Pittsfield died in the Civil War. One was Private Orlando Hall Worcester of the 7th Ohio. He had been wounded in the Battle of Winchester in 1862 and died of his wounds. The other was First Duty Sergeant William Wallace Worcester, who was in the 12th OVI. He enlisted against his parents' wishes in October 1863. And then in June 1864, he was wounded at St. Sterling, Kentucky, and ultimately he died of those wounds in October 1864. Now, when Ryan and I were out taking photos, he had taken a picture of William Wallace's tombstone, and this was before either of us knew about the Sigsworth connection. It's a little faded, but you can still read the text. On April 11th, 1965, the Civil War statue in Pittsfield was destroyed in a tornado that killed 9 people in town. The town repaired the statue, but if you look closely enough, you can see the damages. And somehow, as I was thinking about that, it seems symbolic for the entire war and our continuing need to heal as a country. If you're interested in learning more about the Civil War and its a fascinating history, please attend a meeting of the Quincy Gillmore Civil War Roundtable. You are more than welcome. If you have any questions, please email me at kellyboyersager@gmail.com with no punctuation, or call 440-670-6624. Thank you very much.